Welcome to China Manufacturing Decoded from Sofeast, the podcast where we take you through some of the major topics facing importers and manufacturers in China today. Hi everybody, this is episode 57 of the pod. Adrian here, and I'm joined by our CEO Renaud Anjoran. Hi Renaud.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How's it going over in Asia? I heard there's a lot of stuff going on with the logistics and a lot of issues with that at the moment.
That's for sure. It's getting worse and worse.
Mm,
I shouldn't laugh because a lot of our clients are suffering,
no.
but it's issue after issue. I mean, you had the Suez Canal blocked, and then you have, I think it's over, but it's been a problem for about a week, maybe more. A part of the Yantian terminal in the main port of Shenzhen was basically inactive, so that
Yes.
has had a lot of ripple effects, and that probably is going to have a bigger impact than the Suez Canal issue, actually, all considered. So yeah,
Mm.
let's see.
And that's
What's
because
your
of COVID, right? So they've had outbreaks in China. We haven't seen much going on in China with it, but suddenly they've had a few clusters around the ports and connected to that, right?
Yeah, they had, I don't know, two or three cases, I think, in the um, western side of the terminal in
Mm.
Shenzhen, and then at the same time they had a few cases in Guangzhou and Foshan, and then they now they're testing everywhere in Shenzhen, Dongguan, Huizhou, and so on,
Mm.
Zhongshan, probably Zhuhai. So
Yeah.
they trying to contain it. They're doing a lot of testing everywhere in all the
Hmm.
neighborhoods,
Mm.
and yeah, they hope to quash it before it spreads, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and very, very fast vaccinations as well. I'm sure I read somewhere that it said that China's
Oh,
doing 20 million people a day
right.
now or something.
Yeah, I read that too. Yes,
Yeah, so
yes.
that's pretty impressive. Today's topic actually is packaging reliability testing. So, of course, the packaging is connected to the shipping of products, which is connected to the logistics that we were just talking about. So, when we
Mhm.
go into packaging reliability testing, this is really more focusing on packaging from the point of view of protection, right?
Hmm. Right. So the number one basic, how to say, objective
Hmm.
of packaging your goods is to make sure that when they arrive, they're still in a condition that is usable or sellable, right? If you, I don't know, if you buy, I don't know, something like a microwave oven, and there's a nice retail box with color photos and everything that's going to be shown in a supermarket, let's say, and you just ship the retail boxes like that, they're going to be stacked up in, let's say, in a container. They're going to, the ones at the bottom might get crushed. The ones at the top, if there's a little leakage, will get all wet. I mean, it's, when they arrive, maybe half of them have to be thrown away. I mean, it's a huge waste. So to prevent that, um, they might be put into maybe, well, definitely into master export cartons. Maybe there might be also some other inner cartons inside to provide some extra protection. But
Yeah.
the master shipper carton is going to be the most important for protection. And then there might they might also go into a poly bag maybe before going into the carton, just to make sure that the whole thing doesn't get too wet. And then maybe they might stack up some of the master cartons on pallets and ship it on pallets. Now pallets will provide will provide more than protection. It will provide protection, especially if you pile it up in a way that makes sure that it's going to go nearly all like to the top of the container. And
Hmm.
if you don't ship full containers, the freight forwarders will not try to put some other goods on top of your goods,
Mm.
which is often a cause of damages. So pallets do protect. They keep things, more rigid, like less moving around. You can really control much better how things are going to be during transportation. Um, but they also help with productivity, right? Put things on the pallet, then after that you have a palletizer to move it around, to move it directly into the truck, into the container, and then out of the container directly into the warehouse. It might actually save hours of work rather than having free form sort of cartons, a bunch of, I don't know, 2,000 cartons coming out. Then you have to have a lot of hands to move them around. But if it arrives and it's 20 pallets, it's much faster to unload. And that can make a lot of difference if you get a lot
Yeah.
of containers and you have to unload them at the rates that prevail in Rotterdam or Long Beach or someplace like that.
Yeah.
So these are some, typical examples. If you have some products that require extra protection, sometimes we see that they are in crates, like wooden crates, maybe, um, with wooden panels on the sides. Now that really provides a lot of protection. That's great. Um, but it's a small minority of products that really need
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, when you're talking about pallets, for example, it's definitely going to be helpful for moving things around and reducing, the labor and the time, but also
Yeah.
reducing risks. Because if
Yeah.
everyone's moving something by hand, there's so much more chance of droppage and, risks like that,
Correct.
right? Mm,
Correct. Yes. So
okay.
the rule, when you think of packaging for protection of the product, is that you always start from your supply chain. Okay, what exactly are these cartons going to go through? Are they going to be, moved, stacked up in a container, um, or maybe in a truck, and then there's going to be a lot
Mm,
of vibration in the truck, and they're going to be put in a warehouse, then they're going to be consolidated with other cartons. They might, and then they're going to be piled up in a container. They might be at the bottom of the pile, so how much weight is that going to be? Then how long is it going to be in this container? At what humidity and what heat,
mm,
right? It might get very hot and humid for 5 weeks because a lot of these routes go through the tropical areas on the
sure,
ocean.
sure.
So eh, it's pretty hot and wet. And then it arrives, it's unloaded. How is it going to be unloaded? And does it go to like a major distribution center, and then it's loaded again into some other trucks, and then go to some regional distribution center or to stores, or so you need to start from all of that. And what are the risks? Is it going to be
Mm,
um, dropped on the floor, as you were alluding to?
hmm
What's going to happen, and what is the cost of that? I mean, if the products are very cheap, that's less of a risk financially speaking than if it's, I don't know, laptop computers, right? So you always start from what what stressors, what risks are in the supply chain, and then from there you have to think, okay, what kind of packaging should we use for the product? And obviously you also need packaging, especially the packaging that is facing the final customer, the final user, to 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 maybe to please that user, right? So
mm,
if you, I don't know, you want to make an electronic product and you want the unboxing experience to be as nice as an iPhone, we have a lot of clients who say that.
right.
Um, that might call for very elaborate design of the box for the unit, the unit packing box
Mm,
with inserts and with all kinds of things. Sometimes it's more expensive than the product itself, which is a fun thing to keep in mind. In the Apple stores, there's a lot of products like that, very expensive packaging. So
Yeah.
because it needs to provide the experience, wow, this is such a qualitative product, nice, in some, in some cases, that's really what people want. So you need to balance the needs of the very nice experience, kind of unboxing the product, and the need to protect the products, which I guess is number one, because
Sure.
if it's damaged, it's not going to be a good experience anyway.
So there's actually a lot to think about. I mean, you've written before, and I will link to a few of your blog posts in the show notes for this episode, but that in fact, a lot of importers don't even specify how products should be packaged at all. But I think you've said in the past that really this is an important part of the entire, new product introduction process,
Oh yeah.
thinking about
Oh yeah.
packaging.
Oh, well, makes me think of something else.
Hmm.
You don't just want to protect the products and make the user experience as good as possible. You also want to keep the costs of moving these products low, because
Right.
if it's very bulky and the packaging can add a lot of volume, so that becomes expensive, especially by air, right?
Mm.
For products that are not very dense, it if it adds a lot of volume, it's just terrible for the cost, the freight costs. So you need to balance all of that. And so, yes, as you say, a lot of importers come to the game and say, okay, yes, I focus a lot on the product. I want to make sure that this product, for example, sells well on Amazon, or for example, it's really new and fixes that kind of problem, or responds to this kind of desire, will do
Yeah.
very well on Kickstarter, or you know, okay, they focus a lot on the product and they don't really focus on the packaging. And we've seen some projects where the whole thing was delayed at the last moment because they thought packaging would be pretty simple. But then, if they want custom printed packaging, custom design and everything, they can't get that made in 2 weeks. I mean, that's just not happening, even in Shenzhen. So
Mm.
that needs to be planned ahead. A
Mm.
lot of people actually trust their manufacturer way too much, and they say, well, what do your other customers do? How do they ship it? And you know better. Just make sure it's protected. And they think, hey, of course, it is the manufacturer's interest to make sure it's very well packaged and it's very safe for the product. But actually, a lot of manufacturers don't really give a hoot about it.
Mm.
Um, they don't think deeply about it. They're like, well, yeah, whatever. The cheapest packaging. After that, anyway, they buy FOB. As long as we bring it in good condition to their forwarder, whatever happens later is later. It's
Right.
not our problem. They will complain to their forwarder if there's a problem, but it's not my problem, right? So
Mm.
that's really, the incentives are not there. It's really not smart to leave that up to your supplier. That's really my point here.
Sure.
And so they need to pay attention to that. And of course, there's some product categories where it's much more critical than others. For example, if you buy, I don't know, some textile accessories, you know, if the products get dropped a bit hard on the floor, as long as the cotton box doesn't open, nothing's broken. There's no problem, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's why when we do inspections of garments or home textile, or it doesn't even make sense to do a drop test of the cottons, because the products inside are not going to be broken. As long as the export cotton box is strong enough, is not completely wet or already
Mm.
damaged, it's probably going to be fine. The risk is not there.
Yeah.
However, another extreme is people who buy printed materials like certain kinds of books or stationery and so on. If it's, if the packing is not very strong, the corners are going to get, damaged a little bit, and then the whole product doesn't look new anymore. I mean, that's terrible, right? And I see that mistake made again, over and over again. They really need to specify very clearly, and to over package it, maybe a bit,
Sure.
put whatever, 20 books into one carton, and then like a little carton, and then 4 of these little cartons into one export carton. That's at least 5 plies, double wall, and that's it, no more than that. And then make sure it's on pallets, and ship it out like that. Or if it's going to be sent by air, put it on slip sheets. It's much thinner than pallets. I mean, nobody's really ships by air with pallets. However, the products can still be damaged in during air freight. So you still want, if you move a lot of these products anyway, you might want to look into slip sheets. So basically, yeah, to summarize, different products need different types of packaging, and the buyer has to think about that and has to request that their supplier, follows certain specifications or suggests exactly how they're going to pack it, with photos and specifications and things like that the buyer can confirm. But the buyer cannot just leave it up to the supplier. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, and as you've mentioned, the types of products, you need to think of the context of what's going on, because apparel can't be broken by dropping a box on the floor, but a microwave oven, it can be. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay.
Imagine a set of dinnerware in glass, or even worse.
Yeah, good example. Okay. So when we talk about how to decide which packaging we're using in order to get the correct level of protection that we need, I mean, there are a few elements that are critical to this.
Yeah, so actually there are international standards for that.
Okay.
And probably the most famous one is from the ISTA, which is an American standard organization.
Yes.
ISTA 1A and 2A are probably the most famous ones.
Mm-hmm.
There are some others, the Japanese have one. There's, FedEx has one. I mean,
Yes, yes.
I think Amazon sometimes has one. I mean, there's a lot of different standards like this. And I was talking about it with a packaging engineer actually called Kevin Howard in the US. And he never really starts from these standards. He kind of looks at them as, yeah, whatever, For certain products, it's not enough protection, and for some others, it's way too much protection. Meaning, a lot of money is wasted in packaging materials and also in shipping costs, right?
Yeah.
So that's why, if you ship a lot of a certain product and you want to optimize all of this, it's a good thing to work with a packaging engineer. Make sure you document, as I said before, your supply chain, what's going to happen to your cartons or your pallets or whatever, how are they going to be treated, what are the risks, what do you want to avoid, and so on. And then the packaging engineer will actually, help you design the right kind of packaging and also help you design the right testing plan for that, right? And there's, for example, this packaging engineer, Kevin Howard, that I mentioned, at one point was working for HP, Hewlett Packard, making printers out of Singapore. And he completely rethought the way it's packaged to make it more compact and less bulky, less volume. And actually it was much better at preventing the damage that was done that was occurring in transportation, right? There are ways to do that if you really think about it, but very few companies actually do that well. I think that's what you wanted to go into, but these kind of standards usually call for certain tests that basically replicate the the stressors, everything that I mentioned here. They
Yeah.
replicate, for example, the how the carton is going to withstand a free fall, right? So you do a free fall drop test
Mm-hmm.
in a certain sequence, on the carton, a corner, the edges around that corner, and then the faces around that corner. That's an example from a certain
Mm-hmm.
height based on the weight of the carton. That's a very, very typical one. Another one is compression. So the cartons that are going to be at the bottom, what's going to happen to them? Are they going to get crushed if they have a lot of load above them, pushing downward for weeks and weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to fare? So you basically do such a test a bit accelerated with a heavier load, and you see how it withstands it, right? And these two first tests require pretty much no equipment, as long as you can measure from how high you drop the carton, and as long as you can put maybe big water bottles or whatever, the right weight on some kind of flat surface that you put on top of the carton, that you're good to go. It's very easy to do. The other two kinds of tests that are very common require some specific equipment. One is vibration, and vibration is very interesting, not just to confirm that the cartons themselves will hold up. For example, in a truck, if there's a truck ride on a bumpy road, how is it going to go? Is it going to get crushed, much more easily? What's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen also inside, right? It also confirms that the product itself is fine, right? So it's often done in parallel on the packaging and the product. Vibration is one of the main causes of failure of electronics, for example. And so it goes on the table, and then there's different ways to arrange the types of vibrations, right? The intensity, the pattern, and so on.
Yeah,
And then
the intensity applies to different methods of transportation. Somebody somewhere has worked out the correct intensity of vibration, for example, for a train and for air freight, which is fascinating
right.
to me.
Yes. Yeah, you try to replicate the same conditions, which is smart. Yeah. And then the last one is um, heat, humidity. As I said, it's going to stay in a container on the ocean in the tropical area for some time. How is it going to withstand that, right?
Yeah.
So you put it in an atmospheric chamber and test it there, basically. And these are the four common types of tests. And none of the equipment here is expensive. I mean, we have a table for the vibrations. We have atmospheric chamber. It's that equipment is not very expensive. It's a lot of factories actually have it.
Yeah. Actually, we do have a page on site that explains the different tests that we do that you've just been through. So I'll share the link to that.
Cool.
Great. So that's a good introduction into how to select the right type of packaging for protecting products on those long journeys over the sea or even in air freight. So before we finish, do you have any final takeaways to share with the listener about selecting the right packaging for the job?
Well, the closer the packaging is to the product, the more it has to do with the experience, in the retail shop or after they buy it, after they receive it, and so on. And the further away, it's more about protection. Maybe the inner cartons, the poly bag, the master shipper carton, the pallets, the crates, and so on. So, and you need to spend some time on all of these levels. You can't just focus on the product itself and the retail experience. You also need to focus on, the actual protection. And if you don't buy much, you might want to overprotect a little bit just to be safe, and then over time rethink it and remove. But in case of doubt, so it's uh, my advice to add a little bit more, right? Maybe triple wall cartons on the export carton, and not putting too many units into it. Keeping the cartons relatively small, maybe with some inner cartons, and talk about the factory about that, specify it. And if they don't want to help, if they're like, yeah, whatever, this small customer is asking questions, whatever, we'll just, it means they're going to give you the cheapest and simplest packaging, or whatever they have in stock. Maybe even, especially now we're in June, we really end of the spring, going into the summer. There's areas in China that are extremely humid. So if they buy the cardboard, 3 months, 6 months in advance in a big purchase, just to have a good price, that's very common. Well, that carton material, by now is getting it's getting wet, it's getting very
Yeah.
weak,
Yeah.
right? So you need to be careful about that. So understand your supply chain, discuss this with your suppliers, make sure you're not taking risks, and then over time try to optimize it based on your supply chain risks, what really your cartons have to go through, and yeah, and then you can focus on selling your products and placing reorders and everything. You don't want to be stopped by a shipment that's damaged, that has 30% damaged products that can be sold, because it's a big loss.
Yeah.
It's really not fun.
No, that's no good at all. Okay, great. Well, good advice for everybody to just be aware of the packaging. I know that everybody is focused on creating amazing products, but that packaging, very, very important as well, as we've seen. You've written a number of posts, and we've also got a good guide to packaging on sofeast.com. I'll share the links to those. So until next time, Renaud, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Have a great one. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to like and share, and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other places that you get your podcasts from. See you next time.